All right, great. So now we're going to talk about business decision-making acumen. Some people simply call it critical thinking, but the foundation is that we are in a decision-heavy environment. The world never ceased to stop in terms of throwing things for us to consider and make a call on. I mean, even you as professionals, one of the decisions that probably you will have found that you needed to make was which firm to join, and what specialization you need to pursue following your success in the IAC and the APC. So decisions, some of them can be short-term, where now if you make a mistake, you can quickly fix. Some are long-term, where if you make a mistake, it takes a whole lot to fix them, money-wise, time-wise, and other resources-wise. So as a result, if we are to become a responsible leader in businesses, we need to do it. We need to then understand what and how do we go about making good quality decisions. So business acumen, remember, it helps us to consider the environment to make quick, correct, and strategic decisions and good judgments. But what is decision-making acumen all about? So let's read. Decision-making acumen refers to the cognitive processes to decide on actions or between alternatives, and it includes analytical or critical thinking, integrated thinking, problem solving, judgment.
Sorry, please share the slide.
Oh, is my screen gone?
No, for my side, I only see the question.
Oh, no, I think I was sharing the wrong thing. Yes, thank you so much.
Okay.
There we go. Then, as we're saying that it is all about the process to decide on action or between alternative, and it includes analytical, critical thinking, integrated thinking, problem solving, judgment, and decision making, and or professional skepticism. So this is it. But now let's break down this a bit so that we can understand that if we are to have a process to decide on actions or between alternatives, how does that look like? So number one, we are saying, so I should actually say components of decision making are correct. We are saying that the first thing is critical thinking, which is why one. So when we talk about why one, we are talking about what? We are talking about critical thinking. So what is critical thinking all about? It involves the research, investigation, critical analysis, reflect, apply professional judgment to the evaluation of data and information from a variety of sources and perspective. And Saika says, here, you guys need to be level 3. You guys need to be level 3. So in other words, when it comes to your critical analysis, you have to be experts. So what is then their expectation here? So their expectation is for you to be given that scenario and rip it apart. Understand why each and every element in that scenario is necessary and crucial to your understanding. That's what it means. So think about that to say, you are saying that I need to apply professional judgment to the evaluation of data and information from a variety of sources. But remember again, for you, the source is just the scenario. But it just means something can be connected to something in the first page, as well as to the last page, middle, and so on. But when we also talk about and information from variety of sources, we are also saying that because you write a technical exam, the technical exam you write requires a body of knowledge. So you come in and I then ask you, prepare the journal entries, review whether this valuation is right or wrong, prepare and give me the appropriate tax effects, advise this particular taxpayer. So all those things, an engineer cannot respond to that. An engineer can probably respond to a strategic question because they can be able to apply some of the other cognitive aspects that don't require what? Them to pull information from other various sources. But when you talk about critical thinking, the sources that we might be talking about might be IFRS 16, IFRS 15, it might be the VAT Act, it might be ISA 500, 315, and so on. So this means that as you are busy reading the scenario, you are not just reading it as a newspaper, as people say. You are reading it as a professional accountant. When we say to you that the company is organized in a divisionalized structure, you then need to say that triggers to me possibility of transfer pricing. That triggers to me the need to evaluate the divisional performance. That triggers to me issues about responsibility centers. Are they cost centers? Are they? Because you are able to analyze, you are able to reflect, and you are able to evaluate data and information from a variety of sources. So as much as you are reading and have to be in the scenario, you, because you are not coming empty-handed, you are expected to be connecting the scenarios with those technical knowledge. In other words, your integrated thinking is being applied by you evaluating that they've said this, but it brings this into knowledge as well as so on and so on. So that is something that we need to be what? We need to be mindful of. Then number 2, integrative thinking. So what is it all about? They say this is a decision-making approach for complex problems based on new finding, creative solutions, rather than merely choosing the best solution from a list of alternatives. So here we are saying that the idea is that you are thinking and looking at a problem from different angles. You are not looking at the problem from just one angle, but you are looking at it from different angles, finding new and creative solutions rather than just choosing from the best solution. So here it's level 2, because as you can expect, some of the things that one will be expected to do, especially in practice, is to say if there is a decision, it could be something as simple as the company decided to launch a share employee scheme. Then the share employee scheme, or rather, let's say this, the company decided to cancel the 30th check that it pays what? It pays its employees, and it has decided to launch a share incentive scheme, which will then pay the employees a lump sum after 5-year period based on the share performance. So now you are required to evaluate that scheme. So now you are saying that, how do I demonstrate integrative thinking, which is a decision-making approach for complex problem based on finding new and creative solutions, rather than merely choosing the best solution from a list of alternatives. So the alternative that has been given to us is the scheme that is replacing a cash bonus by giving them a cash-based bonus scheme. Then when we think about this, we might think about it from a company perspective, which will then be the starting point, that the company will be able to save cash that it will have otherwise paid towards the bonuses. And what it will now do, it will now have what? It can invest that money into revenue generating activities or value creating activities. All right, that sounds very decent. Then from a shareholder perspective, let's say the scheme that we are talking about will then either give the employees shares or give them what? Give them cash later on. If it is to give them shares, then the shareholders are looking at it and saying that, but that might result in a dilution to me. What is the cost of that dilution? Is the exchange in value fair enough or sufficient such that we are able to do it, such that we are able to to get the best out of it? Then we also need to look at the employee to say the same scheme. It is taking cash that will have been available immediately and is promising cash that is available later on. Even more, it is going to evaluate me on a share price that I might not be able to directly influence. So what have you done? You have taken that issue, the complex problem of a share scheme, you have now looked at it from different perspectives, and you are able to bring the people, which are the different stakeholders we mentioned, different issues around value creation, around the cost of living, around employee morale, into all that. So that's what we are doing. It is what? It is really a process of integrative thinking. We are finding new and creative solutions, but the process requires that we look at the problem from different dimensions. Then problem solving now says that now that we have seen all those different stakeholders and we have seen their different interests, how do we bring them together? Because now we have collated and compared the information from multiple sources to correctly define a problem. And we need to assess alternative solutions against the decision criteria and make the optimal decision. We are not making the decision as yet. We are just doing what? We are just now bringing the information together and being able to say, this is an alternative to this. This is the best way to deal with morale. We can educate the employees and so on and so on. But there is still another cognitive process that needs to be followed, which is Y4. Y4 now says, come and make a decision. Should we implement the scheme as is? Should we abandon the scheme? And maybe under problem solving, you decided that there are alternatives to the problem at hand. What should we do? So judgment and decision making is where now you weigh these issues to say that the shareholders we can probably sacrifice, and they might need to put this because we don't want to lose our best employees. We finding that it's very difficult to secure people, and if we don't secure the right people, that can be a very, very costly exercise. Then the next thing is what? The next thing is professional skepticism. Professional skepticism can be a little bit tricky, especially in an exam like the IAC. We see it quite a lot in the APC, because in the APC, if I tell you that the company believes that there is long-term value in South Africa and the exchange rate will decline to 17 Rand in the next 12 months. In the APC, I expect you to challenge that, to research that and see whether that statement holds water. But in the IAC, you don't have the luxury to investigate. You don't have the luxury to consider external information because you didn't know that they were going to deal with this. So what we then expect you, it's when now we are telling you something for you to pause and say, but given X and Y, I believe that this might be a problem. So you question based on the context given. You question on the context given, meaning that not everything you are given nowadays should be taken in black and white, but you should be saying that, what if there's a pinch of salt there? What if something that has been given, I'm expected to challenge it? So you might get a mark by saying, how did they decide on a WACC of 15%? Because they say that they evaluate decision on a WACC of 15%. You might say the basis of the 15% has not been provided. It needs to be interrogated. That's you having a questioning mind. So you need to then say that anything that has not been substantiated to you, you get into this questioning mindset and challenge it. Then Y6, it is now saying that as I'm busy applying critical thinking, I need to be mindful of the ethical principles, ethical decisions, and some ethical problems. They are presented as ethical decision. Consider the one I was telling you about, that when the CEO was deciding that we need to release a game that has not been tested because we are under pressure. We are under pressure. That might then what? That might then bring into question to say, yes, it is a commercial decision. There's a possibility that commercially speaking, the game becomes a success and it brings company money. That's true. But to release a game, which if it's not in good order, might then damage the reputation of the company, might not be the best idea and might not be acting in the best interest of the shareholders and the company. So now what have you done? You have applied critical thinking using the ethical principle, ethical decision-making framework, so that you solve that dilemma of whether to release the game early or not. So that is something that we are mindful of in this particular instance. Does that make sense? Are we clear in terms of these 6 whys? Why 1, critical and analytical thinking. Why 2, integrative thinking. Why 3, problem solving. Why 4, judgment and decision making. Why 5, professional skepticism. Why 6, ethical reason. Then, when it comes to critical thinking does deserve a little bit more mileage, because critical thinking examiners are always saying candidates are lacking. And we always need to be able to say, yes, we agree or we don't agree. Why do we agree? Why don't we agree? So on and so on. So to then really understand what critical thinking is all about, critical thinking, when it's defined, it tends to bring the other elements of decision-making acumen in it. Because it says it's all about seeking information from various sources, which is what we spoke about, TIC. It is then assessing that information's credibility and determining its relevance and veracity. And it will then help you to study in a different way. For instance, one might be saying that I know I've studied Porter's a number of times, but I hear that there are these forces that they talk about, and they say, if the force is not strong, this is good. If the force is weak, this is not good. And I never understood what it's all about. So what critical thinking will be asking you to do is to ask questions that are aimed at finding out the concept behind an argument. Why do we say that if the threat of an entrant is strong, then we are saying that we are not going to make long-term profits? Like this concept, I hear it and I know it that if it's strong, then it's not good. But what is the idea behind this concept? So that is what you are now doing. So that means when you have brushed up your technical, you then study differently, you approach topic differently, because you are always in this inquisitive mindset. You are always having this professional skepticism, not ready to take things as black and white, but you are ready to ask before how you apply it. You are ready to ask, why should I apply it? So that is what we are looking for you to do. You will then ask that, why is it that now when US is announcing tariffs, the rand is then suffering? What is it? What is the idea behind that? Why is it that when we say that the growth has to consider inflation? Because you might say that I know that every time I calculate revenue growth, I compare with inflation. But why should I? You question or you probe the presupposition or the unquestioned belief on which an argument is built on. So that's probing assumption. So these are the things that critical thinking and examiners are expecting you guys to do. They're expecting you to really think very differently, to be leaders that don't take things as they are. Then I've given you, which we're not going to talk about, some guidelines that are very important in terms of how do you think about some of these things? What kind of questions, when I say ask questions, are you asking? So these are some of the questions that you can just look into. And when you're studying, when you've got the scenario before you, do ask them, and you'll then get to see how to think about them differently. It will also help you to enhance your engagement with the lecturers to say that, but yes, hold on. I hear you, Kanye. I hear you, Manda. But do you disagree with my view that says 1, 2, 3? You know, that question is such a powerful question because you are now provoking the other intellectual person before you. And you are not just challenging their view, but you are also putting your view ahead, therefore stimulating the opportunity for you to learn more. It's not a matter of, I see you did this, I don't understand. But it is now you taking it a step up and saying, I see you did this, but do you agree? If I then take this number and took it here, the quality of the question has now gone up. And that's why the life classes for me are still very important. And I'll want you to use them like that. I'll want you to then see us as we are doing the review of the Gen 2025 papers to then say, I see how these lecturers are applying critical thinking. This is not how I read these scenarios. I'm reading them this way. So if I'm going to consult, I need to say, what is the problem of me interpreting this thing this way? What is the problem? Or how did you get here? What else can we assume? What else can be true given that they've said X and Y and so on and so on? So that is the idea behind all this question. So have a look at them and reflect in terms of how best one could then think about them and enhance their critical thinking. Then let's quickly reflect as well on the Gen IAC once more. So in Gen IAC, this is paper 2, they had Y4. Remember Y4, what is it all about? What does Y4 want us to do? What does it want us to demonstrate?
Decision making.
So it wants you to demonstrate that you can consider the facts, the arguments, and be able to make a decision. Right? So now, how will you demonstrate it here? They're saying write a memo to the board in which you critically review its decision to vote against a rights issue as a means of reducing the company's debt. So how will you demonstrate critical thinking here? How will you demonstrate what do you call it? How will you demonstrate decision making acumen? How will you? What do you think will then be the expectation from the examiners from you with regards to this matter? Anyone who wants to give it a shot? Hmm? So, no end. So to get this mark, right? Felicity, yes, please. You want to give it a shot? Yeah.
Yes, I wanna try.
Yes. Mhm.
Maybe trying to rank because I would think maybe there would be two choices or
Mhm.
more than two choices. Then I will then try to rank them
Mhm.
in relation to whatever evidence that I will have. And then maybe I will consider the differences that are there as well
Mhm.
to conclude, yeah, and make maybe a professional, yeah, judgment based on the decision that I've made and supported.
But yeah, talk to me about this last part. When you say you make a professional judgment, what will be the professional judgment given what the required is asking? Because the required is asking, write a memo in which you critically review its decision to vote against a rights issue as a means of reducing the company's debt.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Mhm.
go.
Yes, okay. In terms, maybe judgment in terms of the decision that they did make when they were voting against it. And
Mhm.
then I'll assess that decision in terms of the evidence that I have to say, is it the right decision or not?
All right. So your answer, how will it look like? So if you are to frame it, how will it look like? Without just to put a structure, if you are to put headings, well, what are some of the headings that you would put in your answer? Well, what are some of the headings that you will put?
Yep. Sure, maybe someone can assist.
Okay, or anyone who wants to assist, just because we just want to talk about the structure to make sure this mark is in the bag. I see three hands. Pamela, you're on top. Please go for it.
A second, but that's fine. I
Uh-huh.
think looking at the company's debt,
Mhm.
one of the things I would consider
Mhm.
is or if I can put them then in headings, I
Mhm.
would simply begin with what was the company's goal in terms of their debt to equity ratio? I would
Mhm.
discuss that, and then I will then discuss how far away from their goal are they, and
Mhm.
then I will then also go into discussing where does them voting against the rights issue leave them. And then after
Mhm.
that, I will
Mhm.
also then provide my own evidence of what I think could have been the right answer, the right approach to reduce the company's debt.
All right. So you will. So you will. Let me just make sure I didn't miss you. So
Okay.
you'll check the call it target debt capital structure.
Approach. Yes.
Yes. And then you check where currently are they sitting,
Mm-hmm.
and then how far is it from that particular target.
Yes.
And
With the
then,
decision they just took, yes.
okay, with the decision that they just took of not doing a rights issue, right?
Yes.
And then you will then also offer your view in terms of what? Just help me there.
What I think maybe should have been the correct problem, the correct solution to the current debt that they have, or debt equity ratio, or the debt ratio.
Okay. All right. Got you. Thank you. Thank you. Terence?
Hi, Randani.
Hi.
My submissions are a bit similar to the previous speaker, but let me just articulate what I want to say.
Sure.
I would compute a debt to equity ratio in this
Yeah.
case,
Yeah.
and then you compare that debt to equity ratio with say the target debt, the leverage level that the company should have, should do that they have, and if they are far off from their target debt to
Mhm.
equity, I may then conclude that to say the decision to vote against the right issue was appropriate, considering that they haven't reached their debt to equity target.
Okay,
I think
I'm
I'll
following.
yes. So my conclusions will be based on that, whether to support the decision to vote against the right issue if they have not yet exited their target date.
All right,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, thank you, Terence. Violet, go for it, please.
So my approach is also similar to other ones. So I would do the calculations relating to debt and equity that I could think of. And then obviously just trying to do the key ratios. And then I would first see what's happening in the scenario in terms of, like they say, the target and the current situation, and try to understand why they want to actually vote against the right issue. So I'll think about the advantages and the disadvantages.
Uh-huh.
And then I would then go further and then have recommendations like alternative methods of how, if they have a debt issue, how they can propose to them how they can come about resolving this debt issue.
All right. No, thank you so much, everyone, for all those insights. So essentially, the various responses that were put on the table, they've got what? They've got lots of merits, and it is worth it is worth doing what? It is worth just now going back. Let's go back to our slide. Keeping that required in mind, right? So here we are saying that why for, when we look at it, it is the ability to make considered and effective decisions, come to a sensible conclusion, perceive and distinguish relationship, understand situations, and form objective opinions. So that is what why for it's all about: judgment and decision making. So in this particular required, they said the board has voted against the rights issue, right? They have voted against it. So this part is done. And now we are asking, write a memo to them to say, the decision that they've taken, do you agree? So in other words, they say critically review. So when you are busy reviewing, you will then be checking whether that decision, therefore, is it sensible or not? Did the board come to a sensible conclusion? Did they make a considered and effective decision? So now, when you start breaking those terminology, if I say a decision is effective, it is addressing a problem. And now I need to understand, but what was the purpose of the rights issue to begin with? What did they say? They say that this rights issue was to deal with what? Was to deal with the debt problem of the organization. So if this is an effective decision, it should have contributed to dealing with the debt problem of the organization. And you and I know very well to say that if I tell you that a company has a debt problem, now let's agree here. How would you know, or how will you prove it? If I just come in the room and I say that, guys, do you know that Sasol has a big debt problem? Where would you look to prove my assertion? Where will you go? Where will you go in the financials? What will you calculate to prove my assertion?
Liabilities.
What do you mean liabilities?
So basically, if I want to prove that Sasol has a debt problem,
Yeah.
I would have checked the liabilities of Sasol against the assets. If the liabilities are more than the assets.
So you will check whether the liabilities are more than the assets. All right. So in other words, are you saying that you will check whether there's a negative equity?
Yes, also that as well. I would take that into consideration. So
But remember,
check the liquidity and the solvency position.
But remember what you're saying is if the liabilities are greater than the assets, it means that the owner's equity is negative.
Yes, sir.
Right? So if it's not, do they have a debt problem or not?
I'm sorry, repeat that question again, sir.
You are telling me you'll go check whether the debts exceed the assets. So then my question back to you is, if you find that they don't, the liabilities don't exceed the assets, is there a problem?
No. Maybe for
Yeah. All right.
for liquidity purposes, because I'd be looking whether I'm assessing in the short term or the long term.
But let's
Maybe
talk about this particular question. Like the context of they are saying that we want to do a rights issue to address the company's debt. So I want you to talk to me about how would you then determine if there's a debt problem to begin with? What will you go and look at?
Let me give others a chance.
All right, but maybe I'm just asking it different, but I'm sure when someone gets me, yes, yeah.
I stand to be corrected.
Yes.
But I believe what I would look at is, did debt really decrease, even if it's not as a figure, but the percentage, because in the required, they're saying that they want a means of reducing the company's debt. So it does not matter if the debt is less than the assets or the equity. It's just a matter of they are trying to reduce the company's debt. So that's what I would look at. Did it stand differently after they voted against the rights issue?
All right. Yes. So, but let's take a step back, right? And I'm with you, but I want you to go to your previous point, because your previous point, it's a very enlightening one, because earlier you told us that you will start with the target debt to equity ratio or target capital structure.
Yes, amazing. Yes, 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 yes.
Yes, are you impressing yourself?
Yes, I hear you now.
You see, because sometimes the absolute numbers will not necessarily tell us a very enlightening story. Because as you're saying, yes, the debt might have been reduced, but it might not have been reduced to a level that is still fine. We still have a problem, even if it reduced. But where you started with us is that you then gave us some reference. And from a decision-making perspective, a company will generally be worried when it's comparing its debt against something. And you then gave us a framework to say, let's start with our target capital structure. And if our debt is above that capital structure, then we have a problem. So that means we will then expect the board to do something about it like a what? Like a rights issue. But your point, the power it has is that if you are now checking whether the board did well by cancelling or voting against the rights issue, you might find that actually our debt to equity ratio is 60%. But the actual debt to equity ratio is 50%. So the board might have looked at that and say, guys, as much as the debt is high, it is still within our target. So this rights issue is not necessary. That will then help you to know that it is a sensible decision or it's a sensible conclusion. Do you see that? And because this question said calculate, it might be that you are required to calculate the current ratio and compare it with the target ratio. Do you see where we are coming from to challenge whether this is a well-considered decision? Because when we talk about decision making, you are saying to someone, how can you make this decision? So you therefore have to always be thinking about, what do I need to look at? Are you getting where I'm coming from in terms of putting the structure together? Are we clear? So what else can you look at? So we have now been told about the target debt capital structure and looking at it with the existing. What other ratios or what other aspects you can look at to know whether we have a debt problem or not? What other aspect can you look at to know whether we've got a debt problem or not, AP?
I want to try, but
Yes.
I'm not sure. So,
Yeah.
can we calculate the gearing ratio?
Yes.
Yes. So the gearing ratio for the current year, and if there's other information to consider as well as for the previous year, and see, okay, so is the gearing ratio rising? And also we consider the company's asset. We might have the asset in a balance sheet, but actually all those asset they're actually used to secure debt. So if we don't pay our debt, that means this fine for the banks, let's say the banks are going to take our asset as well.
All right. Yeah. So that will be the secondary issue, because at this point, remember that you want to know whether there is a problem that requires a rights issue to fix. Are we together?
Yes.
So the first part will then be saying that, one, what do you have? We have the gearing ratio. All right, now I see that the gearing ratio, as you're saying, I compare it with something. Pamela was talking about comparing it with the target. You are talking about comparing it with the history. All right, you might then say that, all right, the debt that we then have, is it secured against some of our key assets? And you then say that maybe that is then bothering you, or it might not bother you, but that one still has some question mark to it. But in itself, it's worth looking into to say, maybe board, because this debt we have, it's secured against assets we cannot afford to lose, or assets that we want to sell, but we are restricted because of that security requirement. Then that is a problem. And by you not raising this rights issue to release this asset, it's not a good decision. It's not sensible. So that could then be another avenue. All right, I see Snalo. Please jump in. Thank you, Epi.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good
You-
evening.
Does it mean you're still going back to work after class?
No.
Like it's just started your day. All right, sure. Yeah.
I think I would
Yes.
consider the interest cover.
Okay.
So, I mean, if it's too close to 1, if it's too low, I would then that would then signal that there is an issue, and that would, in my opinion, increase the likelihood that they would default, the payment of their the payments that they need to make to repay their debts. And it would then touch on the point that the lady shared, that defaulting from payments would then increase if they used some of their key assets to secure the debt, it would increase chances of banks repossessing those assets. I hope I'm making sense.
You are making sense, and to zoom into the point, because I don't lose the board, because the board they're asking you, Sinalo, did we make a good decision by not doing this? So what you said first, I would want you to put a full stop. You will then say that, guys, let me calculate this interest cover for you, because you asked for calculations as well. This interest cover I've calculated for me is too close to 1. And therefore, it will make sense for you to reduce the debt. And the reduction through the rights issue will have helped it to improve. If you had enough numbers, you could then say the rights issue will then maybe reduce the interest such that this cover will then improve to 2. And that is more comfortable. Do you understand?
Yeah,
Because
I understand.
remember, because they're saying that, did we make a good decision by not doing this? So you have now helped them to say the interest cover is one of the things that you should have looked at, and this is how you should have looked at, and this is how I'm gonna prove to you whether you've made a good decision or not.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Sure. So what I want you to then get is, because why for it's all about decision. You should not move away from saying what is the decision that was being made, and therefore each and every point you put down, it should be moving you to say to them that this decision was a good one or it was a bad one. Do you understand? Like that means don't say anything that will not move you closer to there. Does that make sense? That why for it's all about judgment and good decision making. The board is saying we did this, but we could have made a mistake. When you talk about judgment, you are saying these are the arguments for and these are the arguments against. And therefore, at the end, you need to tell them, guys, you did well or you did not do well. So that is the structure of your response and how you needed to secure why for in this context. Pamela, yes.
I have a question. As
Please.
much as how I tried my best on this required,
Yes.
I still don't understand it fully. And I would really like to ask that you explain to me as though this is accounting 101. So we are trying to reduce that. So now, how does equity affect us reducing that? I'm struggling to find the correlation. I tried to go high to speak about the debt equity ratio and everything, the targets. But when I really come down to the surface, like to the ground, I'm struggling to understand the correlation between the two. If we want to reduce debt, why don't we just pay off some liabilities? But now we are trying to reduce that, but we're speaking about rights issue, which is equity.
Yes, but you see now, what you are doing, it's what we call critical thinking, because you are trying to understand why are we even here to begin with. And that's what I was saying, that some people will take it as we are here, but someone will say, why are we here? So now to then answer your question, and which will then help you to even generate more points, it is to say that, and I think someone raised this to say I'll also consider the alternatives. But what we are trying to then do is to say, 1, do we have a debt problem? That's question number 1. Because 1, they're saying we want to raise, we want to, or there was a decision to raise equity. So if we talk about where that fits in, so equity, what it will do, it means that you will issue shares, and then your share capital as a credit will go up, and your cash will also go up. When you have more cash, you will then pay off your debt. Your cash will reduce and your liability will reduce. Does that make sense?
Oh,
So
yes,
far.
amazing.
So,
Thank you very much.
but before we get there, as you're asking, is that, but why do we even need to raise new equity? So it means that when you answer this question, you will need to go and check, but guys, do you not have enough cash that you can use in order to pay off the debt without this equity? Maybe that's why the board decided to say, no, it's not necessary to issue equity, because to bring down this debt to a level where we are comfortable, we actually have enough cash on our books. Let's use that cash. Because remember, the question is now, why did the board not do what? Issue this rights issue to deal with the debt? And you could say that based on my analysis, I've looked at the cash on the balance sheet, I have considered the plans that they have, and the cash on hand did not have an alternative use. So the board might have decided to use it to pay off the debt, and that's why the rights issue was not raised. So this decision was actually a good decision not to raise the debt. But do you understand now that the question you just asked has now revealed another thing that you need to look at? Look at the cash and whether it is earmarked for any of the existing projects. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yes, amazing. Thank you so much.
Sure. Spiwe, or Simpiwe, yes. Did you have a question there?
Hi, Randan. I think you just
Yes.
answered me because
Okay.
what confused me when I
Yes.
was looking at this question was,
Mm.
okay, I might be wrong. I might not remember the scenario correctly, but
Sure.
in my understanding, it was that they either had an option to go get a loan to finance the purchase of the drones,
Mhm.
or issue the rights issue. So in me answering this, I looked at what both options offer, like what would then result in them reducing the company's debt if they go for the rights issue and not actually get more debt, instead of looking at it, instead of using the ratio. So I think you saying that it covering the available cash for the new project, it sort of maybe covers my confusion here.
Yeah, but I think it's two because the drone one is paper 3. So this one is that, what do you call it? The food one.
Yes,
The fresh cut. Yes.
fresh cut food
Yeah.
project.
Yes. So yeah. And I think what I wanted to just highlight more than anything, it's one, the context, and it's two, to say that how can you use these marks to your favor, so that they can help you to guide the structure of your response, they can help you to guide what you need to say at the end of the day. Because when you've got this Y4, right, one of the mark that you're gonna get, it is the one that will say this was a good decision or not good decision. Do you understand? So this is the idea there. So because you are analyzing a decision, so at the end, I want you to be clear and say, conclusion, the decision by the board not to is therefore a good or not a good one. Express your view. Are we clear on that? Because you are making a decision. The board need to know that after you've told them about the ratios and all these things and have done the calculation, do you agree with them or not? Does that make sense? Okay, then while we are still here, is there a new hand, or if it is, please go for it. Yes.
As a new hand, as
Yes.
I'm just still
No
trying
worries.
to understand the
Yes.
link, us linking the actual question
Yeah.
to the arguments that we're supposed to demonstrate. For instance,
Okay.
my
Yes.
understanding, when a question says critically review,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
supposed to come with both
Uh-huh.
sides of the coin.
Yes.
All
Yeah.
right. Say, okay,
Yeah.
this is the benefits of this decision. This is the downside of this decision. So
Yeah.
if, for instance, there's no critically review in the question and it just says that I must demonstrate the decision and judgment and decision making acumen, then does that mean I must still know that I have to consider and understand both sides or every side of the situation for me to
Yeah.
then reach a sensible. So basically, this can guide the question. Like the
Yes.
arguments that are required at the bottom can also be okay. I think
Yeah. Yes. So absolutely, that is a valid point, that they can guide you in terms of in making a decision. I can't look one-sided. I can't look one-sided.
all right.
Yeah, and remember that because you are thinking in an integrated manner, and we talk about considering the different stakeholders, you will need to think about the investors, you'll need to think about the debtors, you'll need to think about the shareholders, and so on. Do you understand? Because these are the people that when we make a rights issue, we need to be mindful of. So you should not be surprised if you get to say that, yeah, maybe the board, they didn't proceed with this because they were worried that there might be a dilution to some of the stakeholders, and these shareholders might not be happy about it. So, okay, I hear what you're saying. Oh, they were worried that this might not be a good time because the shareholders that are then expected to follow through, they might not have cash. Oh, they are worried that this might take a long period of time because they need to comply with the listing requirements. But now you are able to evaluate a decision, even being mindful of the other people or other stakeholders rather. All right. Then another one, Y6. Y6, remember that it's all about analyzing or applying critical thinking using your ethical codes, ethical principles, and so on. Then they say discuss the ethical behavior and ethical leadership. Ethical behavior and ethical leadership as demonstrated by the directors towards the following stakeholders. So the lenders, the suppliers, the store managers, and what? And the local communities. So do you see Y6 now? It says apply critical thinking using the ethical principles. And now they've listed what? They've listed the stakeholders you need to be mindful of. One of the model that you could possibly use, it is which one? To just know whether they are acting in an ethical manner. What principle thinks about different stakeholders? Is it the CPC? Is it the Companies Act? Or is it another principle that you can look to? What is it? What are some of them of the, because remember Y6, maybe let me just project it again and just to see what it says and how it can help us So Y6 says, make use of ethical codes. Which ethical codes do you know? Which ethical codes do you know?
Good for self and others.
Yes, so not necessarily a code, but it's more of a principle. So you'll be here on ethical principle, right? So the codes will be what? Sorry?
So I said good for self and others, and then you think also about the law, like if they aligned with what's legal.
Okay, but what legal, any specific act that comes to mind?
Laws and regulations surrounding the activities. So I don't remember in the scenario, but I just think about whether it's criminal activities or whether it's lawful. Lawful, I think that's what I'm looking for.
But remember, and at this point, remember that we will not necessarily expect you to know laws that we didn't give them to you, right? Yeah, we'll not expect you to know that there's a health and safety law. You can just say health regulation, keep it there. We'll not expect you to know that there's the combat of corruption and so on activity. You'll just say laws that deal with corruption. So always don't stress yourself too much about the specificity of the laws. Just to recognize that I suspect this might be covered. But all right, but the codes, let's talk about the codes, guys. Because I will expect this will be some of the low hanging fruits for you.
Like the professional behavior, those ones. Objectivity.
Yeah, those ones.
Integrity, confidential, yes.
But remember that here, the required, it's assessing. So let's just go back and just see. So oh, I see some answers. So it's saying, where's my question now? Oh, here it is. It's saying demonstrated by the directors towards the following stakeholders. So when we see ethical behavior and ethical leadership by the directors, what comes to mind?
King. King, board of directors.
Yes, you see. So that means Y6, it talks about codes, and King 4 is one of those codes. So that means if you are there, you are on the right track. But then others are saying CPC. But in the way the question is phrased, what more needs to be true for CPC to be considered? Does CPC always apply to directors?
No, I would think if it's a CA in business or in audit.
Yes. So we still need more information before we jump to the CPC. But the code, as you said, when we start talking about the directors, we are there. And Noctula is also talking to us about the Companies Act. When you see the directors, you can also start putting the Companies Act right there as well, right? Do you see that? Because the directors have got the what? The what do you call it? Fiduciary duty and duty to of care and I think professional conduct or something like that. But you guys will know better. But do you see now that the ethical reasoning, it's reminding you to not limit your answer to just the King Code. It is also now saying, but be mindful of the ethical principles like the good for others and good for self situation. And because here there are many others, it is now even well positioned for you. The lenders are others to a company. Their suppliers are others. The store managers are also others. The local communities is other. Do you see these things? That this ethical reasoning, it's now giving you some direction about what and to what extent you might need to consider this. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right. Then last one, this Y1. Y1, remember, is critical thinking. What did we say about demonstrating critical thinking? We say that it is all about pulling information together, and that togetherness does not only limit to the scenario, but it also extends to your handbooks. Now, let's look at this. It says prepare the correcting journals to account for the sales made by this particular stores during this particular period. So that when they talk about critical thinking, what information do you probably need to bring together? Why will this question be difficult for an engineer, for an attorney, but you will be expected to handle it? What makes you with an advantage in this context? What do you bring that they don't bring? Pamela, yes.
I have a question, and I think it goes with what you are also saying now, because
sure.
I'm looking at the previous ethics question that we just did. Even without referencing the Y6, we would know that we have to discuss the king and good for self and good for others. I'm just worried that now the reference of the arguments is going to make us want to go study the arguments. Is that what? Because even now, even just looking at the pro forma journals, we can just quickly do the journals and move. But now you are telling us critical thinking and engineers. Now we want to ask ourselves, do we have to also discuss something, or what are we supposed to do now?
No. So my advice will be print them, put them on a wall. So they are there in your integrated question bank, and with more examples, just to see how they were applied in specific circumstances. But my idea would be print them, put it on a wall, on a study table, on your study book, so that you understand and you are intentional about refining them. And the idea for me, the next 3 months are enough for them to be embedded, that you will not need to refer back to say, why does Y1 talk to again? I want you every time to see it, referred back to it and say, but why Y1 here? Why Y2 here? And so on and so on. Because the more you do that, especially early on, they will come embedded, and that's what enabling competency is all about. They help you to express yourself, to be that CA. Because as you can see, they don't bring new knowledge. They help you to connect the knowledge you have, whether it's technical, whether it's a general, whether it's strategy. They just help to connect, and that's where the concept of integrated thinking comes in, just to bring things together. That is the underlying value of the competencies.
Okay, thank you. And then my other question is,
yes, please.
Is the group expected to get bigger than this? Because I think some of us now are very comfortable with like being 40. Will it get like 200 as the days go?
So that depends on our thing, on our bosses, because I think they're still doing some marketing. But why do you mean you are comfortable like this?
We are comfortable. You can divide us and leave us together and bring the other people in their own group.
All right, I hear you, people. I hear you.
Yes, please.
All right, I hear you. I hear you. But yeah, as I'm saying, it's my boss's decision. But it's well noted, and well received. All right, Violet.
Okay, to answer your question, so it's sales. So I should think of IFRS 15.
Yes.
Adding the IFRS to the exam, yeah.
You see now, and for you, that means first you need to go to the context, and the context will then have specific issues. Because IFRS 15 is such a big standard. So if they want 15 marks, obviously they don't want the entire standard. Which steps do they want? That's where now your critical thinking has been applied. Is this an issue for step number 1? Is this an issue for step number 2? And is it 2 and 3? And so on. What gives it away? Or because they said this, that means 2 is applicable. But they also said this, that means 3 is applicable. Do you understand? That process that you are running of saying that this is valid out of that long standard, that's you demonstrating critical thinking, where now you are evaluating the data you have and collecting information from various sources, but in this case, collecting it from IFRS 15 and then applying it in responding to this particular required. So, and what I was saying earlier is to say, it's not like you are now required to do something more. It is just now clarifying probably the things that we were expecting from you before, and now saying that we are even going to give you a credit for bringing those things together. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, Felicity, please.
Yeah. Just explain that again. I think I'm a bit confused now, because now it's in terms of prepare the correcting journals, right?
Yes.
So does that mean in terms of me preparing those journals and I get them wrong, the critical thinking part doesn't come through, or they just gonna, I don't know, man. Is it professional judgment on the markers in terms of how I got to the journals? I think I'm a bit confused.
Yeah. So this sometimes it gets tricky, right? Because and again, it's a matter of how far the examiners want to get to it. So it could be that now, because IFRS 15 is such a big standard, the journals that you need to prepare might need you to demonstrate your understanding of the principles relating to identify the performance obligation. Then it might require you to then determine the transaction price. And it might want you to determine the allocation of that transaction price if you identify more than a single performance obligation. So we might be looking for the application of those 3 steps. So then what we'll then do, and this is where it can differ from one examiner to the other. So I, as an examiner, I can say that, yeah, the candidate needs to bring all those 3 steps. But I understand that they can apply step number 2, which is the identify the performance obligation. And instead of saying there's 1 performance obligation, they say there are 2. Instead of saying there are 2, they say there's 1. But they did apply that particular one, and I see them by recognizing maybe even a deferred revenue. So if I see a deferred revenue, it means that Felicity did think about the application of step number 2. Then step number 3 requires that you determine the transaction price. The transaction price, I saw that Felicity then added or considered variable consideration. She did present valuing and so on. So for me, out of those 3 steps, if someone demonstrates the application of 2, I'm going to give them that mark. But if the candidate does not have deferred revenue, that means they didn't think about step number 2. Then they did apply what step number 3, but because they didn't think about step 2, they therefore didn't do step 4. Then they only have 1 out of the 3 steps. Then I don't believe that they went that extra step to deserve this critical thinking mark. Do you see how one examiner might look at it?
Yes.
Yes. So that's the idea there. So the wider the question is, the more there might be a demand. But if now it's a very specific aspect, then it becomes that issue of, as long as the candidate did want to, then make sure you give them the critical thinking mark. All right. All right, cool. Are we clear now about decision-making acumen? Right. So now let's talk about the last acumen, the relational acumen.